Welcome everyone to NMSU's Metaversity. I am Andrew Cedillo, the Director of Micro-Credentials Instructional Design. I'll hand it on over to my colleague.
Hi, my name is Colleen Cleveland. I am an instructional designer for NMSU Global, and I'm here today to basically help out Andrew.
All right, well, we have a very special guest today, and we're really excited to have her here because she's going to be doing extremely innovative things for her HRTM courses. I want to introduce Betsy.
Hi, I'm Betsy Stringham, Professor of Hotels and Resorts here at NMSU in the School of Hotel, Restaurant, and Tourism Management. My interest in having students do VR classroom is twofold. The first of which is we're using VR out there. I was just at a conference and saw a destination organization management company actually do that. So your DMOs. So in other words, instead of visit Albuquerque and having to go see Albuquerque or getting a flat brochure, you would actually be able to experience Albuquerque in VR. And that would encourage you to want to travel there. Large hotels are doing the same for meeting space. So we used to always have to have a meeting planner come in and walk the space. It's very expensive. It's very time consuming. And now that meeting planner can actually see, and I hate to say feel, but, actually feel like they're in the space in VR. And so we're seeing it there. I know we're seeing it in training. So rather than just, again, a flat training, that you would actually don VR and actually participate in training via VR. So I want my students to be comfortable with the tool. They don't have to be experts, but I want them to be able to see the possibilities out there to use VR. But the second reason is that I want them to be comfortable. I want you as students to be comfortable just trying new technology, because it's going to be a constant leapfrog for the next 10 years. We're going to jump from one new technology to the next, and we're going to see some great strides and some huge improvements in how we're able to serve the guest. I'm not saying that we're going to be a robot hotel. I'm just saying that technology you will need to be able to serve your guests is going to be constantly evolving. And you have to be willing to play with it. You have to be willing to try. You have to be willing to say, I don't know this, but I'm going to get out there and do this and learn this, so that you can stay up with your job. Because people ask me all the time, is AI going to take my job? Is a robot going to take my job? And I say, no, but someone who knows how to use AI or someone who knows how to work with a robot will take your job. So that's the other reason I really want students to learn VR. And I say the term, we're going to play with it this semester. And I really mean it that way. It's not high stakes. If it doesn't go well, we'll figure out, do we redo it? Do we scrap it? Where do we go from there? And that's part of learning technology. And that's kind of why I'm excited to try this with students. I'll let you know up front, I'm not a gamer. This was my first time using VR outside of the occasion I'll put a headset on for 30 seconds and look at something that somebody would have at a trade show or an event or something like that. So it's new to me too. So don't be afraid to reach out and say, hey, I need a little help with this, or how do we do this? I'm not getting where I'm supposed to be.
Well, thank you for sharing all of that, Betsy. And we were really excited to bring you on board because we've been talking to you about almost a year now, and you've shared your interest in learning more about how you could integrate it. And so with that being said, can you tell us a little bit about your course that you're going to be teaching this spring?
Sure. This is an introduction to hotel operations. So typically students who are within the first year in the program, most of these students are not very familiar with hotels, but at the same time, some of them may have worked hotels and then school. So we have a little bit of a mixture of students in the classroom. And they learn about how a hotel operates. And if you're familiar with the hospitality business or hotels, you know that it's half product, so half bed, meal, elevator, clean room, that kind of stuff, and half service. And the service is the tough part to emulate. We can talk about it. We can say, what would you say to the guest? We can look at a scenario where perhaps we have not done everything we could have for the guest. The guest didn't understand what happened or what they needed. And somehow we're in a situation where the guest is not happy. So walking into that scenario is a totally different feel than talking about it. So that guest standing right there in front of you, and now you have to solve it. You have to come up with some solutions. You have to keep that guest wanting to come back. And so that's how I want to see us use VR, is to actually immerse ourselves in that experience of a customer recovery, or just customer service in general, to think about it. As we get towards the end of the semester, something that I'd like to try and see is, how would we build a virtual reality lobby of where we'll be in 5 years from now? Because we have these massive desks with all these terminals now. What will it look like in 5 years when we're not using those terminals? So I'd love to see students kind of create in VR too. But So to jump back to the actual question, they learn about hotels, how hotel functions from the inside. Most of us are familiar with how we go to a hotel and what we do there, but what do we have to do to get ready for you to come? What is the reservation process? How do we get that reservation into the system? What do we do with it once it's there? Who are the people that you report to? Who are the staff and the organizations and so forth? And we look at that. And then we walk you all the way through your stay. What happens? We check you in, and then where do you go from there? And what happens through your stay, both to you and then behind the scenes? How do we deliver the service so that it just feels like a great environment for you all the way, I would say, to checkout, but even beyond that. So post-checkout, your ratings, your reviews, and coming back around to us. But all of the little processes that have to go on behind the scenes to make that stay happen for the guest.
Betsy, what experiences are you hoping for the students as far as the VR experience?
So there's two things. First of all, just to be actually immersed in that experience, to actually think about what would it feel like to stand there and deliver that guest service in that moment. We talk in class, what would you say to the guest? But now here's the opportunity. You're going to have to actually role play. What would you say to the guest and go through that? But again, the other is confidence in the technology so that as they graduate, they can go out there and say, well, there's this VR training that would be much better than the training that we have. And not be that, oh, there's this VR training and I don't know what VR is and I'm afraid of it and I'm concerned, but to be able to actually jump in and take control of the technologies that are available to make them a better applicant, to make them a better manager, just all around to have them keep up with the skills that they will need.
Will these also include, say, role-playing, like as in for customer service? Would you have outside individuals coming in to be able to be those customers, if it happened to be a customer from dissatisfaction or satisfied or otherwise?
Yeah, I hadn't really thought through how we're putting it all together, but absolutely. We have a great network of hospitality people who I think would enjoy working with us, as well as just faculty who could take that role. But I have a lot of guest speakers who come in, and I think some of them would actually have a good time joining us to just actually set up some of those role plays. They could give us a little more realistic. We have I use alumni from our program. So those alumni from our program who are out in entry, mid, and high level positions in the industry, and I bring them into class and they talk to students. And most of that time that bring in is virtually. There's a few that are local, but we bring them in virtually via Zoom and other platforms, and they talk to the students. But they could actually help us build a realistic, here's what the guest actually is going to happen. Here's what went down last night. That I have a colleague over in Texas. I'm curious about the weather. So there's always something going on once that weather happens over there that he could help us build a scenario that would be very realistic for the students to have to jump into.
And then I guess the last question that I have for you, Betsy, is one thing that you shared too is VR is fairly new to you. I bet you can probably count, the number of times that on one hand, right, the number of times you've actually jumped into a virtual environment. Now that you've gotten the opportunity to explore virtual classrooms, checked out a virtual hotel, played with some of the different types of tools that are available using this particular app, what are your initial thoughts so far?
Once you get used to where your hands, where's the control, those types of things, I think it's very easy. It seemed overwhelming at first because you don't know where you are or what to do or how to do it. But once you get in there and you learn a few simple commands, it's very easy. It helps you to look at things in a 3D reality. However, we were joking earlier, do we really look like the same people? No, but it gives us a chance to jump in there and try it and see what would it feel like to try this new technology.
Great. And so is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
So in a video to my students, what I'd like to say is relax. It's new. I know it. There's going to be some times you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. But we'll get over that hump and we'll get over it together and we'll have a lot of fun. And I think that as long as you look at it that way, that this is not a big stick that's going to come in and let's just say that you aren't able to do VR successfully the first couple of weeks. That doesn't mean you're failing the class. That means we just need to go back and retool about how we adapted or learned VR. And that lesson is also a good lesson too, because you're going to have that with your employees. I have this dream of what I want to happen in my particular department in my hotel and I implement it, but my employees just aren't getting it. So then I have to go back and retool and step back and say, all right, how else could we train this or deliver this? But I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to seeing what we learn and what we can do further in virtual reality.